Another 5-minute mystery.
Dr. Greenwood speaking.
Oh, Dr. Greenwood. Dr. Greenwood, this is Mrs. Barnes.
Yes?
Something horrible has happened. My husband...
What's happened to him? He seemed well this morning.
The medicine you left. He's killed himself with it.
Oh, Dr. Greenwood.
Where's your mistress?
Well, Mrs. Barnes is upstairs in her bedroom. She's taken this very badly, Doctor.
Isn't there anyone with her?
No. Mrs. Barnes only phoned you and Mr. Graham.
Graham.
Speedy Graham. He's the manager of the Blue Sox, the baseball team. Mr. Barnes pitched for them.
Oh, where's his body?
Well, right in this next room, sir. Won't you step this way?
Has anyone been in here since Mr. Barnes died?
Well, no, sir. That is...
Sorry, Dr. Greenwood, that I couldn't be here to greet you.
I understand completely, Miss Barnes.
I'm still hardly able to think clearly.
Please, try to tell me what happened.
Well, after you left this morning, Mr. Barnes became very difficult.
You mean about the injections I told you to give him?
Yes. He thought that I wouldn't know how to handle the hypodermic. He begged me to send for you.
And then? Then what happened?
Well, I came in about 2 this afternoon. Right into this room, I saw him putting the hypodermic needle into his own arm. His face was contorted with pain.
Yes?
I cried out to him. He slumped to the ground, pale as a ghost. And a few minutes later, he was dead. Look, you can still see the mark of the needle there on his left arm.
Yes, so you can. So you can.
Oh, answer that, please, Gertrude. It's probably Speedy. He said he'd be over as soon as he could make it.
You say, Mrs. Barnes, that your husband became very pale?
Yes. And, oh, please, Dr. Greenwood, don't make me describe it to you again. It was too horrible.
Mrs. Barnes, I don't know what to say. It's been a great shock.
Oh, thank you, Speedy. I know how you feel.
Mr. Graham, do you know of any reason why Mr. Barnes would have wanted to take his own life?
Why, no, sir, I can't think of any. Always seemed happy to me. Excepting for this last spell, always had good health, made good money. Why, he was the best southpaw in the business.
I see.
Mrs. Barnes, you've had a hard few hours. Why don't you rest while I take care of the details?
Mr. Graham, I don't think I'd wasted any sympathy with Mrs. Barnes. I'm going to have her arrested on the charge of murdering her husband.
Why does Dr. Greenwood accuse Mrs. Barnes of murdering her husband? In a moment, the doctor will tell you himself, but first... And now, let's see if your observation is as keen as Dr. Greenwood.
To tell you the truth, I was puzzled in the beginning. I couldn't understand how he could have killed himself with a harmless preparation that I'd prescribed.
But how did you connect Mrs. Barnes to the murder?
Her story and the telltale needle mark on his left arm. You see, Barnes was a southpaw, a left-handed pitcher. If he had really given himself the needle, the mark would have been on the right arm.
Another 5-minute mystery.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Read all about the murder of millionaire Timothy Fuller. Thank you, sir. Timothy Fuller murder unsolved. Read all...
Who shall I say is calling, sir?
Jack Curtis of the Evening Record.
Oh, yes, Mr. Curtis. If you will follow me, sir, Mr. Fuller will see you.
Mr. Fuller?
I'm Leslie Fuller. It was my father who was killed.
According to reports, the case isn't progressing so well.
No, it isn't, Mr. Curtis. Seems to be a complete mystery as to who could have killed my father.
I wonder if it might be possible for me to talk with the other members of the household.
Oh, yes, of course. There's just my sister Barbara, Barton the butler, and myself.
Did you ring, sir?
Oh, yes, Barton. Mr. Curtis would like to talk to you and my sister. Will you go for her? She's in a room.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fuller, were you at home the night your father was killed?
I'm a radio news commentator, Mr. Curtis, and at the time my father was killed, I was on the air.
Oh, don't believe I've ever heard you on the radio, Mr. Fuller.
It's quite possible that you haven't, Mr. Curtis. My commentaries are broadcast in shortwave, unless you had a shortwave receiver.
Oh, yes, yeah, of course.
Did you want to see me, Leslie?
Oh, yes, Barbara. May I present Mr. Curtis of the Evening Record? He wants to ask you some questions.
How do you do, Mr. Curtis?
Oh, how do you do?
You remain also, Barton.
Yes, sir.
Where were you at the time Mr. Fuller was killed, Barton?
I was in the kitchen, sir. I was helping cook polish the silver. When I heard the shot, I ran into the drawing room and found Mr. Fuller slumped over in his chair.
Shot through the head, wasn't he, Barton?
Yes, sir.
And where were you at the time, Miss Fuller?
Oh, I was here in the library. I was lying on the sofa listening to Leslie on the radio when I heard the shot. I never miss him.
Radio? What radio?
That old portable over there on the desk.
Oh, I see. Where is the cook, Mr. Fuller?
She left this morning. She was terribly upset, and the police said it would be all right.
I see. Oh, that's a very beautiful picture of you there on the desk, Miss Fuller. Do you have another one like it?
Why, yes, of course, but...
Oh, I don't want it for myself, Miss Fuller. I want it for my paper.
Just what are you driving at, Curtis?
Just that your sister's picture will appear in the paper tomorrow under the headline, Daughter Murders Father.
But that's fantastic. You have no reason in the world to believe that I murdered him.
No, I don't I? Well, you made one statement that convinced me immediately that you were lying.
What was the statement that led Curtis to believe that Barbara was lying? In a moment, we'll let you know. But first... Now, back to our mystery.
Yes, Miss Fuller, you made one statement that convinced me immediately that you were lying. Your alibi was that at the time the shot was fired, you were lying in here listening to your brother's commentary on the radio. That's impossible, Miss Fuller. Your brother broadcasts on short wave. Short wave is something different, Miss Fuller, and requires a special receiving set. You could hardly expect me to believe that you heard your brother on that old portable radio you have here. It just wouldn't work. Get your hat and coat, Miss Fuller. Where you're going, you'll have a long time to figure out the intricacies of short wave.
Another 5-minute mystery. Far to the south, hidden in the mysterious low country of Cuba, a sugar plantation house, dimly lighted in the somber dusk. In the parlor of the house sits a small, thin woman.
Lester Lockwood was my brother, Inspector. His wife, Nydia, drove him to throw himself off the river bank.
Suppose you tell me the whole story.
Well, 2 years ago, my brother and his wife left their professorships in the English department at Lynbrook College and came here to live and write. As time went by, Nydia became fascinated by the native drums. One night, she wandered alone in the jungle.
And never came back. Yes, I remember.
And then the first of those mysterious notes appeared, written in blood on dried bark. I have been chosen, it said, for one of the living dead. Come to me, Lester, and share my eternity. It was signed, Nydia. Lester watched for her, certain somehow she'd come for him. And last night, we were standing on the jungle path.
Judith, the drums. They're getting louder. She will come. I know she will.
Oh, Lester, give up this plantation. It's evil.
It's too late. She's here. Listen. Did you hear that?
What?
A movement. Yonder beyond the trees. Look.
Oh, Lester. It is Nydia.
It's true. Judith, my wife's one of the living dead.
Lester, come back.
I've got to find her and save her from this voodoo magic.
He ran off in the darkness, and I went quickly back to the house to wait. And at last, Lester came back.
I couldn't find her. I looked everywhere.
Then you've got to come away from this place tonight.
Judith, look, here on the window ledge.
Oh, another of those terrible notes. What does it say?
You are a human. You cannot know the glory of eternal life. Come to the jungle, to the drums, and share my living death. Keep this between you and I.
Oh, she's trying to destroy you. Trying to, Lester.
I'm going to her, Judith.
No.
Lydia's waiting for me to come.
Lester, come back. Come back.
And this is the note your brother found last night on the window ledge, Miss Lockwood. Eh?
Yes. Others, I suppose he destroyed them.
I see. And you say your brother's wife was formerly an English instructor?
At Lynbrook. She met Lester there.
Your story, Miss Lockwood, is interesting, and I think I know the truth. But the chief at headquarters would rather hear it from you, so come along.
What was the clue that led Inspector James to arrest Judith Lockwood? In a moment, he'll tell us. But first, and now, here's Inspector James.
Under questioning, Judith Lockwood broke down and confessed to the murder of her brother and his wife. She was a pretty mixed-up woman, but she had imagination. I knew Judith had written the note herself because no instructor of the English language is going to make 2 grammatical errors in 4 short sentences. You don't say human for human being. And nothing is ever between you and I. So, if you didn't know, let's keep it between you and me.